What's up everyone, my name is MrJordilicious and today I'm gonna talk about a game that no one was able to run but now got a remastered version that hopefully more people can enjoy. I'm talking of course about Crysis Remastered. Is this new remastered version gonna be worth it, or are you better left if you just skip it? Let's find out. Maximum intro. Now I think the original Crysis was probably best known for its insane system requirements. And back in the day it was definitely pushing the boundaries of PC graphics. I've never actually played the original game, so this was my first time of wearing the nano suit. Now one of the first things that people often talk about when they mention Crysis are the graphics. And while I definitely surpassed the minimum requirements, the game did default to the lowest settings for me. Now seeing as I was pretty curious about the differences between the highest settings and the lowest settings, I tried playing the game on both of those settings, and even though I feel that I didn't get the maximum experience because of my hardware, I was actually surprised to see that it ran at all. Now, having said that, even on the lowest graphical settings, the game actually looks really good. Sure, the textures look nowhere near as good, plants and foliage have sharper edges, and the lighting and shadow effects were toned down. It's still a great game to look at. I think this is a great thing for people without the latest hardware, like myself, who wouldn't have been able to run the original Crysis, yet they can still enjoy this remaster. Now, even though the game was definitely playable for me at the highest setting, I definitely noticed that I didn't get the full frame rate that I expected, and things overall felt a little bit more sluggish. But of course, with my specs, this is to be expected. Now, if you have the hardware for it, you can technically run this game at an 8K resolution, and they also named the highest graphical settings, "Can you run Crysis?" Which of course is a little bit of a wink to the memes that were made back in the day. One downside though is that this version of the game isn't a remaster of the original PC version, but rather a port of the console versions back to PC. Of course, back in the day, Crysis was a very demanding game, so being able to run this game on an Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 hardware was already pretty impressive. However, it did mean that they had to tone down some of the effects, which is something that you also still see in this remastered version. For instance, animations aren't always as smooth, and walking through vegetation feels kind of weird. Also, the physics sometimes look a little bit off. Now, especially walking through plants and bushes, you can see that the animations don't always look as smooth, and sometimes textures pop in and out, which of course is a pretty big deal in a game that takes place on a tropical island with so many bushes and plants to walk through. One thing that hasn't changed is that the environment is still heavily destructible, with trees, buildings and fences breaking semi-realistically. Now, having talked about the graphics also means that we basically covered everything that is new in this remastered version. The game is basically still the exact same as it was in 2007. This means that by today's standard, the gameplay feels a little bit outdated at times. The main big element of the game is the nanosuit, which allows you to select various modes such as cloak, armor or speed. Selecting this gives you a short amount of time to enjoy these features. When playing through the game, I found that the gameplay did indeed feel a little bit outdated. Enemies usually spot you from a distance and start shooting right away. I actually struggled quite a bit taking out multiple enemies from a distance, while clearly they never had an issue hitting me. Also, because of the lush vegetation on the island, seeing enemies can be quite difficult as well. You can use your binoculars to tag them, but tags only show up on the minimap, so while this does give you a general idea of where they are, you still need to spot them yourself. Oh, and speaking of the minimap, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I oftentimes had a hard time actually figuring out where things were in relation to myself. Sometimes when I looked at the minimap, it seemed as if an enemy was standing right in front of me, while in reality he was actually a little far ways off. This to me, combined with the spotting element I just talked about, made it somewhat difficult to sometimes actually spot the enemies that I was supposed to shoot at. Now, the nanosuit powers in the game are definitely a very nice and fun addition, but it comes with a pretty big caveat. They use your suit's energy, and I found that it drains quite fast. The maximum armor setting could only take 1 or 2 hits before depleting its power, and the cloaking ability also doesn't last long enough to silently infiltrate an enemy camp. Cloak does stay on longer when being crouched, but obviously you're also moving a lot slower. Overall, I think if you've never played Crysis and you don't have a state-of-the-art PC, the remastered version is probably the way to go. It does lack some features from the original, there's only single player and the Warhead expansion is completely excluded, but the fact that even at the lowest setting, the game still manages to look great is pretty impressive. Gameplay-wise though, don't go and expect an extraordinary experience. The game is fun at best, but especially to today's standards, nothing special or noteworthy. The nanosuit capabilities do add a cool element to it, but because your energy runs out as fast as it does, it can be quite tricky as to how and when to use them. Now, if you've also played Crysis Remastered, or perhaps you've played both the original and this remastered version, I actually would love to hear your thoughts on it. So definitely let me know what you think in a comment, which you can leave below the like button. And with that, that's it for me for today. All that is left for me to say is that, as always, my name is MrJordilicious. You've all been extremely delicious yourselves as well. Take care, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please support me by leaving a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and ring that bell to get a notification when my next video goes live. In the meantime, here's some other videos you might enjoy.